There are people who put their dreams in a little box and say, "I've got dreams, of course I've got dreams." Then they put the box away. They bring it out once in a while to look inside and say, "Yeah, still there." These are great dreams, but they never get out of the box. It takes an uncommon amount of guts to put your dreams on the line, to hold them up and say, "How good or how bad am I?" That's where courage comes in. I read these words from Irma Bombeck years ago, and it's always stayed with me. Because there is a way to manifest your dream life. You don't have to be rich. You don't need a high-priced education. You just have to use the one thing we all have conscious access to. Because there's a pattern you can find in anyone who's made a major life change. 3 key stages captured in what might be the simplest and most powerful idea I know. I was in darkness, but I took 3 steps and found myself in paradise. The first step was a good thought. So let's start there. Thoughts are incredibly powerful. Every great transformation, every revolution, and every new movement must begin with a thought, a new way of looking at the world that asks, what if things were different? Take, for example, the Wright Brothers. Wilbur and Orville Wright were high school dropouts. In December of 1892, they opened a small bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio, where they learned basic mechanical skills. Inspired by the work of Sir George Cayley and Leonardo da Vinci, the brothers were fascinated with the possibility of human flight. Around the same time, some of the world's best minds were racing to figure out how to build the world's first motorized airplane. Samuel Langley was one of these men. As a well-educated professor who held a seat at Harvard, Langley was given $50,000 in grants from the War Department and $20,000 from the Smithsonian to invent the world's first airplane. Because of his connections, he was able to put together a team of brilliant engineers. In his search for fame and prestige, he had all the tools to do it, and yet he never did. The Wright brothers had none of these things. No one on their team had a college education. They weren't given grants of money. They were self-funded from the savings they raised at their bicycle shop. And while they weren't driven by fame or status, what they had was belief in a dream that building their flying machine would completely change the world. To anyone watching, the idea that these brothers could do it seemed delusional. They were so far behind. How could they ever make it? Why even try? They attracted a small team of people who all believed in the same dream. Driven by passion, they worked relentlessly. On December 17, 1903, the brothers flew the world's first motor-powered airplane, a craft that they built, beating out scores of teams with more money and resources. A few days later, despite all his advantages, Langley quit, and the Wright brothers took their place in history. How was it possible? In a society that conditions us to feel like we have no power, that our dreams are impossible, or that we're passive victims of forces outside our control, having self-belief becomes a superpower. The author Walter Wintle wrote that if you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but think you can't, it's almost a cinch. You won't. For out in this world, we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win the prize. Because life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man. But sooner or later, the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Self-belief is the seed of all possibility, the root of all change. For years, scientists believed that the brain structure couldn't be changed, that the brain you're born with is the one you're stuck with. But studies in neuroplasticity now tell us that the brain is a lot more flexible than once thought. The word neuro refers to neurons, the nerve cells within the brain, and plasticity means the ability to change. And so research in this area shows us not only that the brain continues to change throughout our lives, but that just based on the way you think, your brain can reorganize itself, forming new pathways and rewiring connections deep within its physical structure. In other words, when you think positively, you change your brain. Whether you do it by practicing gratitude, visualization, or meditating, the results are very real. A meta-analysis of more than 200 scientific studies on 275,000 people found that having a positive growth mindset led to success in almost every domain of life, including marriage, health, friendships, and career. It's the reason psychologist Richard Wiseman said that expectations play an absolutely vital role in explaining why some people obtain their dreams with uncanny ease, while other people rarely get what they want in life. All of it boils down to one very simple truth. The things you focus on expand. Focusing on the negative traps you in a cycle of pessimism, which rewires your brain for negativity. But making the choice to shift your focus to the positive will attract and magnify more of the things that bring you closer to your heart's desire. This same basic insight is found in many ancient traditions. If you want to change your physical reality, then you first have to change your thoughts and beliefs surrounding it. We see it in the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Because when you begin to understand the deep correspondence between your inner reality and the outer reality, you start to realize that to transform yourself is to transform your world. Every single person who manifests a dream must first believe in a vision that doesn't yet exist. Before it can become real in the physical world, it must first become real in the mind. This first step is what sets everything else in motion. Nothing can happen without it. And when you can see that vision clearly, all the universe conspires in helping you achieve it. Ask yourself, how can I shift my focus and attention to the things that empower me? What beliefs bring me closer to my heart's desire? You don't have to believe every thought that comes into your mind. Belief is a thought you choose to make real, and one good thought is enough to begin to rewire the neural pathways in your brain for hope and optimism. The words we use have tremendous power. Take, for instance, the man who posted this message on an online forum. My mother died a few months after I was born. Whenever I asked how she died, people would tell me she passed away in her sleep and no one knew why. But just a few years ago, I learned the truth. She had cancer when she was pregnant with me. Giving birth to me severely weakened her and eventually led to her death. I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive myself because, from what everyone's told me, she was an amazing woman. A stranger replied and wrote,
Hi, I'm a mom, and if I know anything, I know that yours would tell you this if she could, so I'll tell you for her. She never regretted it. Not for a second. You are made of everything that was best in her. Cancer may have ended her life, but getting the chance to create yours was her proudest moment. She faced the end with nothing but peace, knowing that you would live on where she couldn't. Sweetheart, you have nothing to forgive yourself for. You didn't take her from this world. You are how she remains in it.
That is how powerful words can be. And every single one of us has that same power, because the words we use are a choice. The author Connie Rossetti says that the stories we tell about ourselves and the words we use shape our happiness and well-being. And in moments of despair, often what we need is to learn to tell a different story about who we are. This idea is something we find in many ancient traditions. In Lawrence Kushner's The Book of Words, he writes that the magician's word abracadabra comes from the Aramaic avara kedavra, which means I create as I speak. It alludes to the idea that words aren't just things we use to communicate with each other. Words are an act of creation. And much like an incantation, which comes from the Latin word incantare, it means to cast a spell, to charm, or enchant. It captures this sense that words contain real power, and you can use them to bring about the reality you want. So choose your words carefully. Ask yourself, how can you speak in a way that positions you as an agent of change, a creator of your own reality? One good word is enough to shift your entire experience. To make any lasting change, you have to take action, because it's the act that takes the vision you have in your mind and brings it into the physical world. There's a great example in the 1982 movie Gandhi, where, after 1947, India was being torn apart by conflict, and within the country, Hindus and Muslims fought each other bitterly. There's a scene where Gandhi goes on a hunger strike, refusing to eat until the violence stops. A man comes to Gandhi's bedside and says, "Eat. I'm going to hell, but not with your death on my soul." Only God decides who goes to hell. Well, I took the life of a child. I smashed his head against a wall. Why? They killed my son, my boy. The Muslims killed him. You can hear his gut-wrenching pain, the anguish he's feeling, how he's lost all hope for the future. I know a way out of hell, Gandhi says. Find a child whose mother and father have been killed, a boy about this high, and raise him as your own. Only be sure that he is a Muslim, and that you raise him as one. With these words, Gandhi shows the man the action he can take to change his life. Why does it work? Because only an act of love can stop the cycle of hate and violence. Love can save an orphan child from growing up alone. It can give a grieving man the meaning and purpose he needs to fill the emptiness left by the loss of his son and remorse for taking the life of another. It won't erase what he's done. We can't change the past, but it brings the possibility of love and healing into a world divided by war. This one act carries the seed of hope for a better future. It transcends culture, religion, or any human-made distinction that could ever exist between us. I was in darkness, but I took 3 steps and found myself in paradise. The first step was a good thought, the second a good word, and the third a good deed. Because the truth is, doing good transforms not only the person who is helped, it transforms the person who does the helping. It transforms you. Maybe you've done things you aren't proud of, things you may think are unforgivable. But whatever you've done, you can find redemption. There's a way out of hell, and you can make the conscious choice to rise above your current plane of thought and bring into being the highest version of who you are. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can do right now to move towards that higher being? It doesn't have to be as dramatic as the man who spoke with Gandhi. You don't have to change the world. It can be as simple as reaching out to a loved one you've lost touch with, or inviting new love into your home. Make it the smallest and simplest step you can take towards your goal, one that makes your own life brighter. Because we are not on our journey to save the world, but to save ourselves. But in doing that, you save the world. The influence of a vital person vitalizes. What do you think? Do you have your own story of manifesting your dream? Are you on that path now? I'd love to hear from you. And I'd love it if you pressed the like button and left a comment with an airplane emoji. As always, thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.